Premier League title race, let's get straight into it. As it stands, 7 games played going into the international break, and 4 points separate the top 5 teams. So we'll go in reverse order. Let's kickstart with a big question for Aston Villa. They're in Europe. They seem to be off to a great start. Do you boys think they're in a genuine title race? And could they push the bigger teams all the way?
No. Let's be blunt. No chance. People are getting a bit too carried away. We do this every single year. With a team that likes to play nice attacking football, everyone seems to get excited over it, and then it always falls flat. We said the same thing about Spurs last year, and it fell flat. And Villa are no exception. People forget that they lost the first game of the season last year 5-1. They should have won the Conference League. They're the best squad in it by a mile, and they lost it. They are prone to silly defeats. And let's not forget, no disrespect to Unai Emery, I do rate him as a coach, but this is also the guy who didn't win the league with PSG first time round and got knocked out of that famous game against Barcelona in the Champions League. So as far as I'm concerned, Leopards don't change their spots in management, and that will come back to haunt them eventually. They're doing well, but I'm sorry, no, everyone needs to calm down.
Jamie, do you agree, or is that a bit harsh?
I think it's a bit harsh, but it's not at the same time, weirdly, because I thought they'd have a drop-off from last season. And results-wise, I think they've surprised me and done quite well to be already 5th in the league after 7 games. But I've also got the sort of what I've seen of Villa. I think they're playing a bit worse than last season. And what's actually pulled them through is the super sub Duran, really. Because Villa didn't rely on that last season. They didn't have that super sub that came on, scored the goals. They were winning their games through being a very, very strong team, and Watkins getting a lot of goals and assists. But this season, I feel like Watkins hasn't hit his form yet. He's getting a few goals now, but he's not hit his form. And I think they're relying on Duran. Like, you heard it when they played United, it was 0-0, but Duran was coming on as a sub. And the crowd got really excited, which wouldn't have really happened last season. But it was kind of expected. They thought he was going to score. I know Paddy Power made a tweet going, "Oh, it's 1-0 Villa. Duran's coming on, by the way. It hasn't actually happened yet, but it's going to," kind of thing. It's sort of that way. But I don't think they're performing overall as well as last season. But they're still picking up the results, so that's still a positive sign for them. I do think Europe playing in the Champions League means they can't rotate their team. And that's a big problem for them to try and actually make a title challenge. Doesn't mean they can't get top 4, but as a title challenge, it might be a bit much.
Exactly. And before you jump in, Jordan, it's like maybe I was a bit harsh because I jumped straight in on it. But like I said, a leopard doesn't change his spots. And the games they've won, they should have won, really. They've lost to Arsenal this season in their first home game, which they'll be disappointed about. But really, they should be getting results against the teams they've played. And the win against Bayern Munich isn't really much of a shock. This Bayern Munich side they play good football, but they've not been the same as what they've been the last couple of years. I know Duran is hungry like the wolf at the moment, but thank you for that. Thank you.
Shocking.
There is only so many times, one, he's going to settle as a sub player, and 2, only so many times that's going to work. Teams will just tactically adjust to that. Look at them, all cheering and getting loud against Man United. He didn't do anything in the end. So that only takes you so far. And let's not forget, they did try to sell him. So
yeah. That's very true.
It's going to get
he's looking for a buyer.
But they have given him a new contract as well.
Yeah,
that's just happened as well. So
that's just increasing his value, isn't it?
Yeah. And don't get me wrong, I do like Emery. I like the Villa team. It's nice to see the top 4 actually have a refresh. That's the only good thing about the Premier League, is the battle for 4 spots actually different every single year. So can't knock it, but I just don't see it. I'm sorry. Modern football does not allow for Aston Villa to be winning the league.
Fair enough. It's going to be hard for me to argue the reverse here, but I do think they're showing signs. And the reassuring thing for Villa is I think they're going to be, in a year or two, knocking on the door of the so-called top 6, saying, look, we're a big team now. Because I don't think you can take anything away from a beating Bayern Munich. Like, the atmosphere in that stadium, like, the vibes are back. And to be fair, I get your points on the results. But at the end of the day, they are fifth. They're level on points with fourth. They've had a good start. I think the only concern when you look at the matches is the lack of big team wins. Obviously, losing to Arsenal, drawing to United. But I think they've got a good squad. And I kind of get both sides. But I think Duran, the luck's going to run out at the end of the day. You can't keep playing 30 minutes and scoring. So as good as he's been, I think that eventually will die out. And if they don't see the uptick in form, then they're going to start drawing and maybe losing games. Let's move up the table into fourth place. Chelsea. Again, we all said it pre-season. Hard to predict. Could be anywhere in the table, and we wouldn't be surprised. I've been personally impressed with our start. How do you guys see it? I know we had a bit of a debate yesterday on the chat. Are Chelsea in the title race? Do you think realistically we can push the bigger sides, or is it just way too early?
I think we need to add in your comment, to be honest. I think it was, if you didn't draw to Forest and beat them, you would say you are in the title race.
Yeah. Now, well, let me explain that then. So,
yeah. I think that's a good start for Chelsea.
The way I see it is, and maybe I could make the case with Villa as well if they'd have won yesterday. You're in the title race until proven otherwise. If it's let me dig out a random team. If it's a Brentford who are, had a really good start to the season and they're top four, are they in the title race? Probably not. But you look at the squads of Villa, you look at the squads of Chelsea, and there's enough quality there on their day to push all of these top sides. So my logic is, until proven otherwise, you're in the title race. And if it's all ifs and buts at the end of the day, we didn't. So I kind of said we're not in the title race now. But if we won yesterday, and we should have won, you're 2 points off the top. You're 1 point behind the so-called title favourites City and Arsenal. So I don't know. I'd argue if things have gone better, we are in the title race if you're a point or two off. But it's until proven otherwise. And I don't know. For us yesterday, maybe that was proof.
I think for Chelsea, the test is after the international break against Liverpool. Realistically, the one challenge you've faced is Man City, and you've lost it. Now, granted, first game of the season, you can't look too much into it. I know that the Palace and Forest draws come across as a bit of a disappointment, but realistically, if you went 1-0 down against Forest last season, you would have lost. So there's an improvement there. It's how he can deal with those sorts of teams that are going to play like that and try and beat them is different. I think what Maresca's shown is obviously he got Leicester straight back up, and he was able to come out of that slump that they hit towards the latter stages of last season. But that slump is a real concern, because is Todd Boehly going to give him that chance? Because he showed that he could turn it round, but that slump was concerning. The benefit for Maresca is he's got a huge squad. So he can play a different squad in the League Cup, a different squad in the Conference League, and a different squad, of course, in the Premier League. That's his advantage. His players are going to be fresh every single week, technically. So that's the benefit, but it's when you start to play against the better sides, it's how you deal with that. But as a start, Chelsea fans can't complain for what they've had so far, because it has been better than what I think they expected.
Yeah, I think I agree with Reece on the points of sort of the games you've had. You were expected to probably lose against City, and then you probably expected to win all of your games otherwise. So that's where I don't think there's been that massive test of Chelsea yet. Which your next four, which is Liverpool away, Newcastle at home, United away, and Arsenal at home. There's not a better test than them 4 games in a row. So that will properly see where Chelsea are. And even if they beat Forest, I'd still be saying the same thing. Going, play them 4 games, see how many points you pick up. Then I can argue that you are in the title race if you say if you won all 4, for example. At the moment, I think your problem will be that consistency, because you are under the new manager. So that, I think, adds to you got to work out everything he wants from the team. And some weeks it will go perfectly and some weeks it won't. But the one thing I think Chelsea would have a problem with if they were title challenging is teams would come to Chelsea and there'd be 11 men behind the ball going, break us down. And that's what City see every week. Arsenal are seeing every week. And I think Chelsea, that was your problem against Forest.
Yeah.
I believe it was just your problem against Palace as well. So it's sort of, that's the sort of style that you would have to then adapt to get to. Whereas when you played Wolves away, they did not sit back, and that's why you absolutely spanked them. It was, I think you did. I don't think Brighton wouldn't have played that way either. I didn't see that game, but that's why you got quite a few goals, because they didn't sit back. Whereas I know when City play Wolves away next game for us, Wolves will be sitting back. So that's the kind of difference, and that's where I think Chelsea would fall, sort of drop too many points to win the title, essentially. But the argument I said with Villa and the squad, Chelsea don't have that problem, because you're going to play a completely different team in that Conference League, and you should still win that tournament. I think Palmer's not even registered. Who's your best player isn't registered for that European competition. Sort of says it all in terms of your squad size and how important certain games are. So I think it's too early for Chelsea. I think top 4 is the realistic challenge for you.
Yeah, I think, unfortunately, well, I think not unfortunately, but the positives are, because of the squad size, we're getting consistency now. Like, as you said, Maresca literally made 11 changes midweek versus Sunday. But I think we are seeing, there's a lot of positives about us. With you already under a new manager, you're seeing consistency, which you wouldn't expect this early on. I think, again, ultimately it comes down to the next 4 games where we're at. The City game, I still think, is a little bit exaggerated. Like, it was quite a close game. City were just more clinical. I think we had a higher XG and possession was similar. So it's not like we got absolutely played off the park. But ultimately, next 4 games matter. But, Liverpool away, I can see being a real struggle. But the other games you kind of look at and go, actually, if we turn up, we could do well. But I agree. Realistically, no one at any point pre-season thought we'd ever be in a title race. It's just that we've had an okay start. So, to your point, Reece, as well, all those games last season, Wolves, West Ham, Forest, like none of those games we fight back when we probably lose. So I think that's a really good example. Let's move up the table. I mean, now we're getting into it. In 3rd place, Arsenal. Many did pick them to finally win the league this year. So City, and obviously City are in 2nd as well. Both teams are level on points and level on goal difference. So the 2 favourites of the title, pretty much neck and neck. Reece, has your opinion changed? Have you seen anything that suggests this could be your year, or are you still just not seeing enough?
No, my opinion's not changed. I still don't see enough. I still don't see, as good as Kai Havertz has been, I still don't see bringing on that poacher, etc. The difference I give us is that obviously when we lost Odegaard and we lost Rice for a game, we had 2 away games at Spurs and City, and we got 4 points from that. Would have probably been 6. So the reality to that is that's a huge statement made, and that's a huge difference of where we are. 2 games drawn, and one of those was Brighton with 10 men. We beat Southampton, which was a good result despite going 1-0 down. We managed to come back. When we last played Southampton, we couldn't come back from that. So there are positives, but I don't think we've got enough. I still think we miss a striker, or perhaps even a bit of strength in depth a little bit more, because I think even though we've done all right, when we lose Odegaard, realistically, or can we afford to, can we play someone else and rest Saka, for goodness sake? Do you know what I mean? It's those elements coming into it. But I think Arsenal fans have got to be happy with their start, especially with that dodgy period, Spurs and City away from home. So, yeah, it's an improvement.
I think you can argue you've got a bit more depth now. As I said, I don't think Sterling's the one, but like Martinelli seems finally to be coming, after however long, finding a bit of form. So you've got Martinelli and Saka, then you've got Trossard and Sterling as backup. So again, it's a little bit more depth, arguably, than you had last season. Defensively, it's kind of been a bit of a weird one, because you look better defensively, like against City away with 10 men. And then you go and concede 2 to Leicester, you concede to Southampton. So it's a bit of a hard one to read at the minute.
I don't think that's a huge shock. You get that quite a lot. Let's be honest, it was a worldie from James Justin and a lucky goal. you get this happen. We had the best defence in the league last season and still didn't win it. So I'm not too fussed about conceding goals these days. But we need to stop that. We need to stop those silly goals going in. I get what you mean. Yeah, you can't just put in the defensive performance of your life in one game and decide to throw it out the window in another. So,
But you can argue they're two completely different games. Arsenal going away to the Etihad against City, you're going to defend a lot deeper than you are at home to Southampton, to Leicester. Because them games, you're expected to score your 3s, your 4s, 5 goals. So you are going to be so much more attacking than you are against City. And especially the defensive performance for Arsenal at City was 45 minutes with 10 men. So the fact that they sat so much deeper and looked more solid defensively is due to the tactics because of the type of game it was. Because if Arsenal went 10 men down to Leicester, they wouldn't have sat back that deep anyway. It was only because it was City, for example. So that's where I think the defensiveness does change. And I see it with City myself, with who we play changes how open we are defensively. I think Arsenal, though, have to take credit that they've gone to City, Spurs and Villa away, and not lost any. Unbeaten. And to be fair, the only 2 times you've drawn is when you had men sent off. So when you've had 11 men on the pitch, you've won all your games, and you've had tough fixtures. So really, I think Arsenal can be quite happy where they're sat, 1 point off the top, joint with City. But it does come down to, should they have just bought a striker? If they'd have bought a striker, I think I saw chances that Jesus had against Southampton that a better striker, goal-scoring striker, would have scored, and then you wouldn't have had that sort of worry at being 1-0 down to Southampton. So that could come back to bite you. But I do agree with Jordan with the Sterling signing. That means when you play your next round of the League Cup, Saka can sit on the bench. Give him a rest. I said it to you two, though, that he started against Bolton. Why are you starting him against Bolton? Stop giving him extra minutes that he doesn't need against a team you should beat without him. So that's kind of how I see on it. And I think Sterling isn't a bad signing. I don't think it's a great signing, but who are you going to buy that's going to sit on the bench behind Saka when Saka's what? How old is Saka? 22? 21? Something that young. So that's where I don't think it's a bad signing. I think Arsenal have a lot to be happy about, and I still think they're going to push for that title.
Yeah, there's nothing against it. We've not seen anything yet to kind of say they wouldn't be in the title race ultimately. And yeah, unbeaten as well, can't knock it. Speaking of being unbeaten, of City, as we said, exactly the same. 5 wins, 2 draws, no losses. And as I said already, the goal difference is the same. I mean, City are still the favourites in my eyes. Again, maybe a little bit of weakness getting rattled by Arsenal in a game. 9 times out of 10, I know Arsenal, you're competing with the league, but City would win that game, even with the 10 man, 9 times out of 10. And I think the only real weakness I've seen is just literally that game. You just looked a little bit flustered when maybe normally you wouldn't have been. But as I said, other than that, you're unbeaten. Haaland's firing in the goals. I know he's had a quiet period since he's come my FPL team, shock. But other than that, he's been an absolute machine. So I think all things are looking up for City, same as Arsenal, really. And it's hard to argue that they've dropped off the pace.
It's going to be interesting for City, I think, to see how they get on after the international break away to Wolves. I know Wolves, there's no point Wolves having a defence at this moment in time, but it's such a big moment for Wolves to get a result. They're going to have to step up to the occasion. It's how City got on with that. City could go there and tear them apart 6-0, but we know Wolves could beat them 1-0. I think they need to stop conceding goals. I know that's contradictory to what I said earlier, but City have the firepower to just come straight back. They've not missed Rodri, clearly. So, again, City can't complain where they are. I think they'd complain, obviously, about the draw at home to Arsenal, because they probably should have won that game when Arsenal had 10 men. But if you offered them these points at the start of the season where they are, they would have taken it.
Well, the Rodri point is a good one, because I think it's only been 2 games since, but the Newcastle draw, I think City looked a little bit off it. And you can argue the flip side against Fulham. I think they had a higher XG. And if Traore could finish, arguably you would have drawn or lost that match. So maybe there is a little bit of weakness in City.
See, with the Newcastle game, that didn't worry me. 1-1 away at St James's Park, I'm fine with that result. Last year, we had Rodri. We had De Bruyne come back. He had to score one, and we won in the 93rd minute. So really, St James's Park, if you get a point, that's not a bad result at all. Winning's a bonus. So that one I weren't bothered with. The Fulham game, though, was exactly the blueprint to what can completely damage City. And that is quick players on the counter and players that can hold up the ball like Jimenez did in that game. Traore running through, looking like just almost gliding past Walker, which can't be said about a lot of players. Yes, Traore finishes, we lose that game. It's not even a draw, we lose that game if Traore finishes. He has 3 big chances himself. And Ederson deserves some praise because people always criticise him for conceding goals, but normally the XG of their goals are 0.7. It's like nearly a penalty's worth every time. And they're like, why has Ederson not saved it? And it's like, you've got to give him some slack. He's not going to save all of them. And he did save, I think, 3 big saves he made in that game, at least. I agree with you, though, defensively, we look so open. And it's not just the Fulham game. We've only kept 1 clean sheet, and that was Chelsea away, first game of the season. In the league, anyway. That's a concern, and I think Pep should go back to the treble-winning side back 4, where we played Akanji, Stones, Diaz, and then I'm happy with Gvardiol, but you tell only one fullback to go forward, and at the moment, we're letting both of them go forward, and that's why we're so open. So that's a concern I do have, and I don't think even Rodri would be stopping that. And to be honest, with the Rodri point, actually, Pep did say it. Every game that Rodri started, we drew, and every game he didn't start, we won. I can't remember how he said something. He said something along them lines. It wasn't like it's because Rodri's not playing, we're not winning. So I think Rodri out is a big blow. At the moment, Kovacic is stepping up for us. Scored 2 against Fulham, for example, and is also playing well. But Rodri's still the best CDM in the world, and that's a massive loss. My actually other problem is, you said about the firepower, Reece. Our problem, I think, is goals without Haaland. I know we scored 3 against Fulham and none of them were Haaland, but if you look at our goals this season, number 1 is Haaland with 11 goals. Number 2 is Kovacic with 3. And he only scored 2 on the weekend.
And he doesn't score goals.
And he doesn't score.
It's not sustainable to expect him to score 15, is it?
Yeah.
You don't expect him to score it, no. So that's where the concern is. Other players have got to start scoring goals. Foden's got to be starting more and scoring more. Doku, Savio, De Bruyne, they've all got to start scoring. Because Haaland's not going to be scoring at this rate for the rest of the season. Otherwise, I think people were saying he was going to score 88 goals or something stupid like that, which isn't going to happen. So that's my concerns. I'm still going to back City, but there definitely are issues there. It doesn't make it plain sailing for us to go and win the league.
All right, let's move on. Last but not least, it is Liverpool leading the way, 18 points, 6 wins and 1 loss, with the best goal difference in the league as well. I think this one, we've got to say, is a bit of a surprise. Again, new manager. I know the squad's not changed much. There was all the criticism, though, in the summer. They're not signing anyone. So I don't think with all that noise, I don't think really anyone expected them to be top at this stage. I know it's very early. How have you guys rated Liverpool so far? Because you look at the stats, 13 goals scored. Again, not the best, and that's the worst out of the top 4. But goals conceded, 2 goals. That's impressive. That's extremely impressive for this stage of the season.
I think Liverpool have done better probably than what people expected. But actually, if you look at their 7 games, their hardest game was United away. Now, United away can go 2 ways. That was either going to be a 0-0 or Liverpool were going to batter them, really. The best United could hope for was a 1-0 win and hold on for dear life. So apart from that, the fixtures, if you looked at the fixtures for Liverpool, you'd fancy Liverpool to win every single game. And that's nearly what they've done. And they lost 1-0 to Forest. Now that happens during the season, so it's not a criticism of Liverpool for that one loss. It happens. City will do that in one game. Arsenal, Chelsea, Villa, they will all do it in this season. The test for Liverpool is the next games, I think. So I think they've got Chelsea. I think they've got Newcastle as well. It's them sort of games. They need to perform in them games, and then you can go, actually, Liverpool are a team that are going to be in the title race, because it's the same squad. And are we saying Slot's going to do better than Klopp? I don't think so overall.
He's not changed much, I guess. Maybe that's what's working for him. Stylistically, he's not changed that much, I don't think.
Not, and that's what you shouldn't do, because you've got a very good team. Like, you've got a load of world-class or borderline world-class players in that squad. Why are you going to change it so much? You shouldn't. So this is why I can't be critical, or I don't want to praise Slot too much, because this isn't his squad. This is a very good Klopp squad, and he's just keeping it roughly the same. But you can't fault him for 2 goals conceded. That's a very good record.
Yeah.
Like, I wish we kept as many clean sheets, and we're not doing it. So I do praise him some bit, but you also got to just put a small asterisk on it. Be like, let's see him play against some better teams before we start going, actually, Slot's the real deal or not the real deal in this, and can they win the league?
Looking at the games, just to quickly reel off. So, yeah, they've got Chelsea, Leipzig, Arsenal, Brighton, Leverkusen, Villa, Southampton, Madrid, City, Newcastle. So that is, yeah, you're right. That is really where we're going to see what Slot and Liverpool are made of.
If they come and win, if they do the same record, 6 wins, 1 loss out of that, they are in the title race. Like, and they could be even favourites after.
They'll be favourites if they beat.
Yeah, if they do that, they're favourites. That's the sort of that's the test. Yeah. Like I said with Chelsea, that is the test.
Yeah, it's the thing. Like, on this channel, I'm a big fan of Arne Slot. Always have been. I think when I mentioned at the pre-season, when I said about they thrive under the underdog tag, I know Liverpool aren't underdogs, but them not being in the spotlight is exactly what's doing them good. It helped them at Feyenoord, for example. If they're still up there and that pressure's on them, will that change? I don't know at this moment in time. I know you don't look too much into that Forest defeat at home, but I do think that is a bit of a sticky point for them. I'd be a bit peeved that that's our one thing. If that was a draw, wouldn't matter so much. But it is what it is. Yeah, I think Liverpool have a chance to show what they can do. I think they bounced back well from the Forest game anyway. And it is looking good. But you're right, they've won games that they should have won. So it's as simple as that. And they've kept a couple of clean sheets along the way, which is good for them. Alisson being injured might hurt them a bit, but Kelly is a very, competent number 2. Number 1 for many Prem sides, really. I think Arne Slot's been brought in to do a job, and there's a job that he's currently doing. Even if they're going to win the title this season, the long-term questions remain. He's good at rebuilding sides. Obviously, with Alexander-Arnold, Van Dijk, etc., he's going to have to deal with that. But that's not until the end of the season, so he doesn't have to worry. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see how he does. I think if you look at the time he won the league with Feyenoord, the 2 games he lost that season were away to PSV, who weren't great, and at home, I think, to Vitesse, and we've seen what's happened to Vitesse in that time. So it goes to show he loses the games he probably shouldn't lose, and then he goes and thumps Ajax. So he needs to maybe sort out losing to the teams he should beat first, and then he'll be on the right path. But yeah, can't complain about how well his start's been.
Yeah, well, there you have it. That is the top 5 teams. As always, we've had our say. Now it's time to hear yours. Make sure you comment below with who you guys think are the current title favourites. As always, like, comment and subscribe. You know the drill.
Here we go.